Hello and welcome again to another short video courtesy of investingsuccess.ca. Today is the 30th of March 2025. From the time we enter the educational system, when we're like 5 years old, we are taught to think in a linear fashion. And moreover, we are taught to tell time using a timepiece. When I was younger, I had a watch, wore it on my wrist, and that was my faithful source of always knowing the time. Today, thanks to technology, we don't really wear watches anymore. We all have smartphones. We glance at the screen on the smartphone. It tells us what time it is. We take that for granted and we go about living our lives according to that time. And we don't really think beyond what we are witnessing on that smartphone or if we have a watch on the face of that watch. But is there another way of telling time? Are we missing out on something here? I think we are. Back in the day, in the 20s, 30s, 40s, W.D. Gann, he told the time not with his wristwatch, not with a clock in his dining room. He told the time using the moon. That was his timepiece. Let me explain how he did that. From our vantage point here on Earth, we are moving around the sun. We go around the sun one time in 365 days. We have what we call, a satellite planet. We call it the moon, and it is constantly orbiting around the planet Earth. Now, because we are moving around the sun, we will witness the moon in the night sky go through different phases. It will start at a thin sliver, a new moon, and eventually it will get big and bright. We call that a full moon. And then it will gradually start to recede and it will go back to a thin sliver, a new moon. That all occurs in 29 and a half days. That is what we call the synodic cycle of the moon. Now, Mr. Gann did not use the synodic cycle. He used something else. He used the sidereal cycle of the moon. Imagine if you were situated in outer space at a fixed location. And to make our example easier, let's say that you were standing on the sun, gazing out into the vast emptiness of the cosmos. You would see all of the various planets in their orbital journey going around the sun. You would also see planet Earth going around the sun. From that fixed vantage point way out in space, you would see the moon in its orbit around planet Earth. And if you were to measure the amount of time from that vantage point out in space, if you were to measure the amount of time it takes the moon to go around the planet Earth, it would be 27.3 days. That is the sidereal cycle. That is what Mr. Gann used to time the markets, to look at cycles, to look at entry points, exit points, points where the trend was changing from bullish to bearish and vice versa. Now let's look at a few examples of how he did that. Here's a chart of wheat futures, and we know that back in the day, Mr. Gann did trade wheat. This is a more recent chart, and it starts in May of 2024. And the reason I did this is I wanted to start the study at the significant high in May of 2024. What I've told the software to do is from that starting point, I told it to overlay sidereal cycles of the moon, 27.3 days in duration. And what I furthermore have done is I have used these vertical green dashed lines here to mark off the midpoint, the crest, if you will, of that sidereal cycle. Now, I just want to show you what happens here. So from this significant high, we know that we're going to go through a 27.3 day sidereal cycle. Well, from that high, the trend changed. It became bearish, and the price of wheat started to fall, tumble, tumble, tumble. Look what happened right at the midpoint crest. the downward trajectory took a break. It took a pause. And it paused for about 3 days, and then it resumed its downward journey again. How did we know that this pause really was nothing to get excited about? Your stochastic. That tells you the situation of the trend. And the stochastic basically was saying, you know what, nothing to see here, the trend isn't changing. And you would have probably just stayed away from wheat rather than trying to get in on it. Now, look what happened at the end of the 27.3-day sidereal cycle. Literally 2 trading sessions later, and the price of wheat hits a bottom, and it starts to recover. Where does the recovery come to an end? Right at the midpoint crest of the next sidereal cycle. Stochastic says nothing to really see here. It couldn't get above its upper boundary line, so therefore the chances of wheat turning significantly bullish wasn't going to happen. And sure enough, the price of wheat came down. Where did it finish going down? Right at the end of the sidereal cycle. It tried to recover, couldn't do it. Stochastic is telling you wheat is struggling. Stay away from it. There's nothing here. It starts to decline right at the midpoint of the sidereal cycle. The decline stops and it starts to go up. Where does it run out of steam? Right at the end of the sidereal cycle, and that's in about the 10th of August. Wheat starts to drift slightly down. Where does it take on a very decided downtrend? Yeah, right at the middle of the sidereal cycle, and that was 3rd week of August. Hit a bottom, tried to recover. Recovery is going not too bad. We get actually a buy signal on the stochastic. Where did that buy signal come? Yep, right at the start of the next sidereal cycle. And look what wheat did. It made a very powerful move up. It actually left then a gap on the chart. People were very excited, very bullish, and this contract of wheat was going places. Takes a little break, and then it keeps pushing higher. Where does it run out of steam? Well, the stochastic crossed beneath its upper boundary line. That says the trend is changing. Where did that happen? Right at the middle of the sidereal cycle. Now, let me flip ahead to another slide, and I'm going to show you the rest of this wheat story. Okay, here we are. January 2025. Price of wheat is chopping along. Stochastic is saying not much to really see here. It had been coming down. Where did it stop going down? Right at the end of the sidereal cycle. Suddenly it changes. It starts to move up. We do get a buy signal on the stochastic. Where does that upward move run out of steam? Yep, right at the midpoint of the sidereal cycle. Takes a little bit of a pause. Decides to go at it again and move higher. Where does it run out of steam? Right at the end of the sidereal cycle. Wheat starts to tumble, heads lower. Where does it stop heading lower? Right at the midpoint of the sidereal cycle. It recovers. Stochastic says, yeah, there's a bit of a recovery, but the trend is not about to become really, really bullish until it gets above the upper boundary line, which it does not. Where does it fail to really take on a significantly bullish tendency? Right at the end of the sidereal cycle. And from there, the price of wheat has been declining. Where are we now? Midpoint of the sidereal cycle was last Friday, the 27th of March. And here we are. It got absolutely hammered. What's it going to do from here on? Well, we don't know. It could go lower. It could turn around. The stochastic is saying, yeah, this is pretty bearish. What we have to do now is wait until probably around the 8th of April when the current sidereal cycle comes to an end. If there is going to be a change of trend in wheat, and if it's going to be meaningful, it will happen around the 8th of April at the end of that sidereal cycle. So that's how Gann used the moon as a timing mechanism, and you can do this at home. It's not very hard. If you have the software that allows you to overlay cycles, great, use it. Tell it you want to overlay 27.3 day cycles. If you're just using a chart and you don't have the software, you can, from a significant high, you can start overlaying these cycles and just look on a calendar and see when 27.3 days is going to elapse. Mark that on your printed chart using a pencil and a straight edge, and just carry on and lay these cycles out going forward and watch to see what happens. Let's look at another example. Here's soybeans, and we know that Mr. Gann in his day traded soybeans. I've overlaid the soybean chart with 27.3 day cycles. I started from a point earlier in earlier in 2024 at a significant turning point. But you can see that, for example, early in January, when a sidereal cycle ended, what were beans doing? They were taking a pause. And that pause was just a springboard then for them to move dramatically higher. They moved higher. The stochastic could not maintain itself above the upper boundary, so they moved down. Where did they stop moving down? Midpoint crest of the sidereal cycle. They did recover. Stochastic said, yeah, it's not the greatest recovery. There's not a lot of conviction there. And sure enough, the price of beans couldn't maintain themselves and they started to give it back. Where did they stop going down? Yep, end of the sidereal cycle. They had a little boost. The stochastic said, you know what, nothing to really see here. And those people that went long in early February, they got their heads handed to them because the stochastic said the trend was not changing. Price of beans came down. Where did it take a pause? Yep, right at the midpoint crest of the sidereal cycle. Tried to recover a bit, started to ease off, and right at the end of that sidereal cycle, they really got hammered again. They did recover in early March, but again, the stochastic said, you know what, there's not much to see here. The trend isn't changing. And sure enough, they couldn't keep any momentum going, and it rolled over. And literally 1 day after the midpoint of the sidereal cycle, they stopped declining and they tried again to rally. Stochastic said, there's nothing to see here. This ain't happening. And so here we are. We're going to have to wait now and see what happens. April 3rd, in about 5 days from now, is going to be the midpoint of the sidereal cycle. If the stochastic gets above its upper boundary line, that's going to be a sign that, yeah, there's some real bullish behavior in store here. If that happens around about the 3rd of April at the midpoint of the sidereal cycle, jump on board. The train is going to leave the station. Be there. However, if the stochastic shows that it's still muddling along and not really having any conviction, you're not going to see much on the 3rd of April. So again, that's how you're going to use the moon, the 27.3 day cycle, to help you time the markets and help you discern whether or not the trend is changing. And you have to do all of that in conjunction with something like a stochastic trend indicator. Okay, that's really it for here and now. Thank you very kindly for watching this video. You're going to have to play around with this at home. You're going to have to get comfortable with the stochastic, get comfortable laying out these 27.3 day cycles. Always start from a significant high or low. And along the way, if you hit another significant high or low, you will probably want to then start your 27.3 day count again, fresh at that significant high or low. With a bit of practice, you will get very, very good. And you will start to realize that, you know what, there's more to our world, to our cosmos, than just a wristwatch or a smartphone to help us tell the time. The moon is the most ancient of timepieces. Gann knew that back in the 20s, 30s, 40s. That's how he made his money. Bring that way of thinking into here and now. You too can do it. And again, just remember why I do all of this. All of this stuff worked back in the 20s, 30s, 40s until it was swept aside by the academics from Harvard and Yale who tried to tell us that investing is about long-term buy and hold. Don't worry about the volatility. You can't time the markets. Yeah, you can. It was proven in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. It worked back then. It worked today. I just don't want this stuff to be lost. So that's why I write the books that I write, maintain the social media channels that I maintain, and offer whatever it is I offer in terms of written material. Um, that's it for here and now. So, Sidereal Cycle of the Moon, take advantage of it. And thank you kindly for watching, and we will talk again real soon. Take care.